Family pranks me by ditching me in another state. Can I make it back? My family thought it'd be hilarious to ditch me in another state, chuckling, let's see if he can find his way back, before peeling out and leaving me behind. I didn't return. 15 years later, they tracked me down, 107 missed calls that summer. I was 22, meant to be just another year slaving away at my dad's hardware store for pennies, living at home because college was impractical. According to my father, Banks, I was the family's perpetual scapegoat, while my brother Alan, the golden child, basked in their approval. We weren't exactly broke, but we weren't the type to jet off to Disneyland either. So when Banks declared we were hitting the road for my uncle's wedding in Colorado, I should have sensed trouble brewing. 3 days into that grueling road trip, I was already kicking myself for not faking an illness to stay home. Dad and Alan took turns playing their favorite game, tormenting me. Mom, Irene, would murmur, "That's enough," in her feeble tone, but it was all for show. Let me lay it out. Banks wasn't just a typical hard-ass dad. He was the kind who'd drag you out of bed at 3 a.m. to scream about a forgotten chore, toss you belongings if they annoyed him, and had been calling me useless since I could talk. Alan figured out early on, mimic Dad or end up like me. Guess which he picked. That morning, we pulled into a desolate Colorado rest stop. Nothing but fields for miles, distant mountains, and a run-down bathroom shack with vending machines. I'd been dozing in the back of our Suburban and needed to stretch and hit the restroom. Dad and Alan were snickering about something. Mom was touching up her lipstick in the visor mirror. I was wearing a warm Metallica tee, ripped knee jeans, and battered Vans I'd owned forever. I left my phone charging the car and didn't grab my wallet. Why would I? We were in the middle of nowhere, and I was just stepping away for a quick break. 10 minutes, maybe less, in that bathroom. When I stepped out, squinting into the Colorado sun, the parking spot was empty. Our dark green Suburban was gone. At first, I figured it was a dumb prank. They'd moved the car to mess with me. I circled the rest area. Nothing. Betrayal from your own blood cuts deeper than anything else. I sat on the curb for an hour, convincing myself they'd return, just trying to spook me. People passed by, some shooting me odd glances. A trucker asked if I was okay. I lied, said my girlfriend was in the bathroom. He nodded and moved on. After 2 hours, a sick chill settled in my stomach. They weren't coming back. My first thought was to borrow a phone, call them, beg them to turn around. But as I approached a mom with 2 kids, something stopped me. A flood of memories hit. Every insult, every laugh at my expense, every joke that was just cruelty with a smirk. I could almost hear Alan. Betty's bawling right now. Dad, he'll figure out if he's not as dumb as he seems. Mom's half-hearted. That's enough. That changed nothing. So I made a choice. I borrowed that mom's phone. But instead of calling my family, I dialed information for the nearest shelter in Grand Junction, about 40 miles away. I told her my family had an emergency and had to leave, but someone was coming for me. She hesitated but gave me a ride, probably because I looked pathetic enough to trust. That first night at the shelter was a wake-up call. I had nothing. No ID, no money, just the clothes on my back. Dave, a shelter worker, let me use their computer to look up my uncle's address from the wedding invite I'd glimpsed. I considered showing up at the wedding, finding my family, but staring at that screen, I thought, why chase people who left me on the side of the road for a laugh? Instead, I set up a new email, researched how to replace my ID, and looked for cash-paying jobs. I made a plan. 2 days later, I was washing dishes at a diner called Sonny's. The owner, Geraldine, a 60-something with gray hair streaked purple and more tattoos than you'd expect, sized me up when I walked in, explained my stolen wallet, and asked for work. "Dishwasher quit yesterday," she said. "Steal from me, you're done. Start now." Rock Bottom has one perk. The only way is up. I worked doubles, slept at the shelter, wore donated clothes. Dave helped me navigate getting a new ID by contacting my home state's vital records. With my first earnings, I bought a cheap prepaid phone from Walmart. 7 days after they ditched me, my phone rang. Unknown number. It was Mom, voice trembling, asking where I was. If I was okay, claiming they'd been searching everywhere. Bullshit. It was just a joke. Double bullshit. They waited 20 minutes down the road, came back, and couldn't find me. Triple bullshit. I heard Dad in the background, telling her to order me to stop being dramatic and get to Uncle Rick's. Alan was laughing. Salvador, say something. We've been worried sick. The cold dread in my gut was gone, replaced by clarity. You wanted to see if I could survive on my own, I said, my voice steadier than ever. Watch me. I hung up, blocked their numbers, and the next day, I went to Verizon and got a new number entirely. 27 missed calls before I switched. I bet they fumed when they realized their punching bag wasn't crawling back. A month later, I had a tiny studio above a laundromat, always smelling of fabric softener. But it was mine. I'd moved up to prep cook at Sonny's. And Geraldine was teaching me to chop vegetables without losing a finger. Sometimes I'd check my old email, messages from Mom. Please come home, we're sorry. Dad, this childish nonsense stops now. Alan, dude, it was a joke. Stop being such a jerk. I never replied. Freedom, once you taste it, makes the cage unbearable. It wasn't easy. Some nights, I'd scroll Instagram, see happy families, and feel a hollow ache no amount of cursing them could fill. Loneliness could be suffocating, especially on holidays. But every morning, I'd wake up in my little apartment, go to a job where no one called me worthless, and build my life brick by brick. 3 months after the rest stopped, I checked my email one last time. A new message from Mom. Your grandmother's asking about you. Please just tell us you're alive. I deleted the account, tossed my old SIM card in the dumpster behind Sonny's. That night, Geraldine taught me her famous apple pie recipe, saying I had a knack for pastry, the first real compliment I'd gotten in years. I never looked back. Update. 5 years later. 5 years after that Colorado rest stop, I spotted a familiar face on my Facebook feed. Not because I was creeping on my family, okay, maybe a little, but because Alan was tagged in a local news article from back home. He'd gotten a DUI, wrapped his car around a telephone pole. No one was hurt, except the pole. They used his high school football photo. Young, smug, nothing like the puffy mugshot below. Karma's slow, but always finds you. By then, I'd carved out a life in Colorado. My laundromat studio was swapped for a 1-bedroom with real windows. I'd gone from dishwasher to line cook to assistant manager at Sonny's. Geraldine still ruled with flour-dusted iron fist, but treated me like a quirky nephew. My first big purchase with savings was a modest laptop for online community college classes, business management, basic accounting, stuff banks called not real work. Mornings at Sonny's, afternoons studying, evenings back at work. Repeat. I won't lie, I was still scarred from what happened. Trust issues? More like a trust subscription I could cancel if anyone got too close. In 5 years, I'd made 2 friends. Doug, my neighbor who played bass in the Godolphin garage band and shared his terrible homemade beer, and Geraldine, if you could call her friend and not just a boss. Then Kendra started showing up at Sonny's every Tuesday and Thursday, always ordering a Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra coffee, textbook in hand. Sitting at the counter, I end med school, I discovered she had a knack for losing herself in her studies, for hovering midair for minutes. I timed her once. Her record was 7 minutes, 23 seconds before she noticed the egg she held had gone cold. For 4 months, I kept her coffee cup filled, but she didn't truly notice me until one day her eyes flicked up just a touch wider, and she teased that my name tag was misspelled. It wasn't, but it sparked our odd little ritual. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd sport a fake name, always Salvador, Salvador, Salvador. She'd call it out, I'd feign shock, and somehow this goofy flirtation worked. Our first date wasn't meant to be one. Her study group ditched her, leaving her with a reservation at a near impossible to book pizza joint. I was cleaning the counter when she got the cancellation text, and suddenly I was across from her at Antonio's, both of us stumbling into the realization that this felt very much like a date. 6 months later, she moved into my place. A year after that, we upgraded to a modest 2-bedroom. No constantly running toilet. No neighbors blasting bass at 2 a.m. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on my family through dummy social media accounts. Not my proudest move, but it's the truth. Dad's hardware store was faltering after Home Depot opened nearby. His community page posts grew increasingly frantic and bitter. Mom's profiles turned into a nostalgic shrine. Endless throwbacks of smiling family photos, captioning how she missed her boys, plural, which stung, since she'd tag Alan but never me, like I'd been wiped from existence. Alan flitted between jobs, posting vague rants about haters and new ventures, the classic social media veil for someone spiraling. 3 years in, Geraldine pulled me aside during inventory at Sonny's and mentioned she was considering a second location across town. She asked if I want to manage it, not own, just run, a key distinction. I lay awake that night, convinced it was a prank or a test. People like me didn't get chances like that. Banks had drilled that into me, but toxic beliefs linger long after you've left the source. I said yes, spurred by Kendra's half-asleep murmur that I'd be foolish not to, by Doug's stone, "Duh, you basically run the original already," and because Geraldine wasn't Banks, wasn't my family, and never made me feel worthless. Sonny's East opened 6 months later, smaller, with my own menu. That first year, I worked 90-hour weeks, shed 10 pounds I didn't have to spare, and bicker with Kendra about never being home. Passive-aggressive post. It's greeted me on the fridge more than once, but it paid off. People came, they returned. The food was solid, the atmosphere was right. We weren't rolling in cash, but we were getting by. For years after being cut off, I earned enough to chip away at Kendra's med school loans. Not the whole beast, but enough to make a difference. When I showed her the payment confirmation, she broke down, not cinematic tears, but raw, snotty, hiccuping sobs. I'd never felt more human than in that moment. Then my grandmother passed. I learned about it through Mom's Facebook post, a melodramatic tribute drowning in heart emojis. Grandma Rose was the only family member who ever stood up to Banks, the only one who truly saw me, slipping me $20 bills to save for your escape. I thought she meant college. It turned out to be more literal. I considered attending the funeral, even checked flights. Kendra offered to come, to hold my hand through the messy reunion. Doug suggested his beat-up hatchback for the drive. Geraldine just shrugged, saying the dead don't care if you show up, so do what brings peace. I didn't go. Instead, I sent a generic sympathy bouquet, signed Salvador. No return address, no note. Social media erupted instantly. Mom posting about signs and reaching out from beyond. Alan dropping cryptic remarks about prodigal sons. Banks staying silent online, but surely raging behind closed doors. A week later, a friend request popped up from an unfamiliar profile. Blank, no posts, no friends. I nearly deleted it until I saw the message. It's Uncle Rick. Your mom gave me your old email, but it bounced. Are you okay? We've been worried. Your dad's been asking about you. I blocked it that night, then had my first panic attack in 2 years, curled up on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., struggling to breathe, picturing Banks tracking me down, wrecking everything I had built at Sonny's. Kendra found me an hour later, didn't pry, just sat beside me, her shoulder against mine. When I could breathe again, she said, plain as day, "They can't take what you don't let them." The next morning, I called a lawyer, got advice on restraining orders just in case, locked down my privacy settings, and asked Geraldine to tell the staff not to share info about me with anyone. Practical steps. Control what you can. 5 years to the day after being abandoned, I married Kendra in a small state park ceremony. Doug was my best man. Geraldine baked the cake and sobbed through it all, mascara streaking her face to Kendra's boisterous. Tight-knit clan welcomed me with open arms from the start. Her father tossing out corny jokes that didn't make me cringe. Her mother wrapping me in warm embraces that didn't trigger any unease. That's the beauty of family. Sometimes it sweeps you up when you've given up searching for it. A week after our wedding, while scrolling through a burner social media account in the dead of night, I stumbled across a post from Banks on a local forum asking for leads on a son. Salvador, last seen in Grand Junction, Colorado, citing a family emergency. I knew there was no crisis. What I didn't understand was why, after 5 years of silence, they were suddenly trying to track me down. So I dug in, created another alias, joined hometown community groups, and pieced together the puzzle. The hardware store had shut down. Their home was facing foreclosure. Mom was hinting at health troubles online, and Alan had moved back after his third DUI. They weren't searching for me out of love. They needed something. For the first time in half a decade, I grinned thinking about them, not because I relished their struggles, but because I realized I was free. I no longer cared. I shut my laptop, slid into bed beside my sleeping wife, and decided I'd keep tabs from afar. Not out of spite or affection, but because sometimes the greatest payback isn't what you do. It's the life you create while they unravel their own. Years later, a LinkedIn alert shook me. 15 years after being left at that Colorado rest stop, my carefully built world had a crack. Someone had viewed my profile 27 times in a single day. Not unusual for recruiters, but the name was Alan Matthew, my brother. The past is cunning, lying in wait for years before it pounces. By then, my life was unrecognizable from that first year in Grand Junction. Kendra had completed med school, finished her residency, and now worked 3 days a week at a local clinic to spend more time with our kids, Ellie, 7, and Marcus, 4. We'd traded the apartment above the laundromat for a modest 4-bedroom house on the edge of town. Nothing extravagant, but with a yard for the kids to run in and my perpetually disappointing tomato garden. Sonny's had grown to 3 locations, not a huge chain, but enough that I only cooked when someone called out sick. Geraldine, semi-retired 2 years prior, still popped in to nitpick our take on her pie crust recipe. I thought I'd made peace with my past, checking on my family only occasionally, maybe every few months. Last I knew, Banks and Irene had downsized after losing the house, and Alan had married, divorced, and remarried. They'd moved on, as had I, but the LinkedIn thing unnerved me. I brought up to Kendra during our Sunday night ritual, folding laundry while half watching a Netflix show we were behind on. She paused, holding mismatched socks, and asked if I was okay. I nodded, unsure what else to say. How could I admit I felt like that abandoned 22-year-old again? Hearing Banks call me worthless? 3 days later, at Sunny's East, the original second location, I was sorting inventory after suppliers sent the wrong coffee filters again when Maya called from the front, saying some family was asking for me. I assumed it was Kendra's parents, who sometimes dropped by unannounced. I walked out, already planning how to persuade them to stay for dinner. It wasn't them. Banks looked aged, grayer, his once commanding presence diminished. Irene's face was tight. Her hair dyed an unnatural brown. Alan mirrored Banks at 40. Same stance, same way of filling a room. A young woman, maybe early 20s, stood behind them, unsure of her place. No one spoke at first. The lunch rush noise faded until I heard only my pulse pounding. Banks said my name, almost like a question. I nodded, my voice apparently on leave. I'd rehearsed this moment countless times over 15 years. Sometimes I'd lash out brilliantly. Sometimes I'd be aloof, untouched by their existence. In weaker moments, I imagined tearful reunions. Reality, as always, was Messier. I pointed to a corner table, told Maya to bring waters, and sat across from the people who were once my family, waiting. They'd found me through a small magazine feature, Rocky Mountain Rising. 10 local success stories. Just a sidebar with my photo outside Sonny's first location. A high school friend of Mom's, now in Colorado, had spotted it and sent it to her with a note. "Isn't this your son?" Mom mentioned 107 missed calls to my old number before it was disconnected, as if that proved something. They spoke over each other, Mom about her worry, Banks claiming I'd misunderstood that day, Alan acting like we were pals catching up. The young woman, Alan's second wife, Poppy, watched me curiously. I let them talk, noticing Banks eyeing the restaurant, likely estimating its value, Mom's hand trembling as she reached for her water, Alan's polished charm faltering when he thought I wasn't looking. When they finally stopped, I asked the only question that mattered. Why now? The truth came out in fragments amid awkward pauses. Banks had heart issues, no insurance, and mounting medical bills. Their second home was in foreclosure. Alan's vague crypto venture had crashed. Mom needed knee surgery she couldn't afford. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted money. I should have been furious, should have kicked them out. Instead, I felt an unexpected pity. These towering figures from my childhood were just flawed, desperate people. I invited them to dinner at our house that night, saying I needed time to think and talk to Kendra. They agreed eagerly, Banks already acting like it was a done deal. That afternoon was strange. I picked Ellie up from dance class, helped Marcus prep for his preschool show and tell, all while texting Kendra about our unexpected guests. She offered to take the kids to her sister's. I said no. I wanted them there, my family meeting my family. Dinner was my tweaked chicken enchiladas, a recipe from an old El Paso box I'd made my own. Ellie set the table unprompted, placing forks on the wrong side until Kendra gently fixed them. Marcus wore his Spider-Man costume because it was Tuesday, his self-declared Spider-Man day. When the doorbell rang, I nearly dropped the dish I was carrying. Kendra squeezed my arm, whispering she had my back. The kids sensed something big, watching curiously. Moments you dread are always both worse and better than you expect. Introductions were stiff. Banks kept calling Kendra Karen despite corrections. Irene teared up every time she looked at the kids, unsettling Marcus. Alan and Poppy were the least unbearable, trying for normal conversation, though Alan kept hinting at family helping family. After dinner, Kendra took the kids upstairs for baths and bedtime, shooting me a look that said a text if I needed her. Then it was just me and them in a living room that felt too small. Banks launched into his pitch. Family sticks together. He always knew I'd succeed, a lie. They just needed a little help. $20,000 alone, of course. I let him finish, then asked if he remembered what he said on my 18th birthday. At least you can't disappoint me anymore once you're not legally my problem. I asked Mom if she recalled doing nothing when Banks trashed my community college acceptance letter. I asked Alan if he remembered telling my first girlfriend I was probably A_her when she came looking for me. They squirmed, made excuses. Banks's voice took on that old dangerous edge, but I wasn't that kid anymore. I was 15 years and a lifetime removed. I went to my office, returned with an envelope, and handed it to Banks. Inside was a check for $73.50, the exact cost of a 2010 Greyhound ticket from Grand Junction to our hometown, what it would have taken to get me back from where they left me. The silence was deafening. Then Banks erupted, calling me ungrateful, selfish, a lifelong disappointment. The greatest hits of my childhood. I didn't argue or yell, just stood and said it was time to go. Mom tried tears and guilt, asking how I could do this to family. Alan dropped his friendly mask, and Poppy looked mortified. When they finally left, Banks crumpled the check and tossed it on our front step. I shut the door, leaned against it, legs unsteady. Kendra came downstairs, asked if I was okay. I nodded, voiceless. We cleaned up dinner dishes quietly, checked on the sleeping kids, and got ready for bed like it was any other night. As I set the security system, I checked the front door camera. They were still in the driveway, arguing, Banks gesturing wildly, Mom crying, Alan staring at our house with a mix of envy and hatred I knew too well. They finally drove off in their rental car. I haven't seen or heard from them since, and I don't expect to. That chapter is closed. The best revenge isn't something you do, it's the life you live. Every joyful moment with my kids, every shared laugh with Kendra, every quiet Sunday morning free of fear, every ordinary day in a life shaped by my choices. That's my victory. I never went back home. I did something better. I built one